أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Assalamu alaikum dear students. Today we're gonna do the 8th lecture of operating system. In this lecture we'll discuss process synchronization. Process synchronization of two processes, right? So let us discuss first what is process synchronization. Process synchronization means that two or more processes share common variables they modify some common variable. So we will call such processes the cooperative processes. On the other hand, those processes which are independent of each other and the result of execution of one process doesn't affect the result of another process. So these processes are called non-cooperative processes. uh, if the processes are running in sequential fashion, no matter they are cooperative or non-cooperative, the end result is not affected. And but in multi-threading and multi-processor model, because multiple processes run or multiple threads run simultaneously, so in that case it is possible that the end result of the execution of two processes or threads may result in inconsistent data. One result shows something else, while the other shows something else. For this, we need a mechanism to ensure that two processes properly synchronize, and two processes should communicate with each other in order to ensure the consistency. Right. So one process should inform the other process that now I am running some critical section, some piece of code that is to modify the common variable. So the other process will wait until the first process complete that particular section of code. Right. Consider producer-consumer problem. That is a classical synchronization problem in which there are two processes. The one process is producing characters, while the other process is consuming those characters. Right? For example, and therefore synchronization is required here, because if the producer is producing character and the buffer is already full, so that character will be lost. And similarly, if the consumer want to consume some character when there is no character in the buffer, or the buffer is totally empty, then in that case the error will be generated, and the consumer process will generate an error message. So in this case, both processes should communicate each other that how much characters are available in the buffer. Both will know. And we are using the bounded buffer. So a bounded buffer is the one which doesn't grow or shrink in the course of execution. It means that we fix its size, limited fixed size, that is initially declared, and that is static and cannot be grown or shrunk with the execution. So we'll call such a buffer a bounded buffer. Now consider an example. We have two processes, P1 and P2. P1 is basically the reader or consumer, right? So P1 is consumer and P2 is the producer. P2 will have to produce some character and put them in a bounded buffer. For example, we have a bounded buffer of size 10 over here. So this is a 10 size buffer. P2 will generate characters and will put the characters in the buffer, while P1 will have to read the character from the buffer. Right. So for example, there are two pointers. The first pointer is in. This pointer show that where the P2 will put the characters. Okay, so the n pointer basically shows that where P2 should insert character, and similarly there is another pointer out which shows that from where the P1 should read. Right. So for example, P2 generates A, and that is inserted at n pointer. Now the n pointer will be incremented, and another character will be generated by P2, and that will be inserted at the n pointer in the buffer. Similarly, third character will be generated by P2, and that will be inserted at the n pointer. The n pointer will be incremented, and similarly another character will be generated and inserted in the n pointer, and correspondingly n pointer will be increased or incremented. At this particular point, for example, P1 want to read some character from the buffer, and it read the character that was at out pointer, and now the out pointer will be incremented. So now P2 will generate another character that will be inserted in n pointer. N pointer will be incremented. Another character will be generated by P2 that will be inserted in n. N will be incremented, and another pointer character will be generated by P2 that will be inserted at n, and n will be incremented. Another character will be generated by P2 that will be inserted at n, and n will be incremented. Another character will be generated by P2 that will be inserted at n, and n will be incremented, and finally another character will be generated and that will be inserted n. Now where should n move? Because we are using static or bounded buffer, and this should be implemented in a cyclic fashion. So n should move from here to the first location that is empty. Now it should move from here to here, right? So n will be moved to the next empty character. Another character will be generated and that will be inserted in the empty buffer. Okay. Basically how this is managed. So look at the code, and similarly n will be incremented. Now in and out are the same position. Look at the code of producer. This is the code for producer. In this code, while true, it means that as long as p2 exists, the process exists. While counter is equal to buffer size, then do nothing. This empty body shows that do nothing, or this is an infinite loop, infinite wait loop. So this loop will stop execution indefinitely until the condition is true. So once the counter is equal to, what is counter? Basically counter is actually the number of characters available in the buffer. Initially when both of these processes are loaded, then counter is equal to 0. Initially counter is 0, but with the insertion of a new character by P2, counter is incremented and counter is incremented by P2. And once a character is read by P1, then the counter will be decremented and that counter will be decremented. Alright, so once this condition is false, this condition becomes false, then this statement will be executed. And this statement, what is actually at n pointer, just like we inserted some character at n pointer in the buffer, next character will be inserted by P2, and then n pointer will be incremented, but it is a straightforward increment. This increment is basically a cyclic increment. In cyclic increment you can see that when n was here, then it moved back to here. And what was the philosophy behind that? That is n plus 1 remainder buffer size. For example, n is equal to 1 2 3 4. For example, n is here, n pointer is here, and in a character d character is written on the buffer here. And now this increment operation, this increment statement is executed. So n is equal to n plus 1, n is equal to 4 plus 1, right? 4 plus 1, that is 5, and remainder buffer size, so buffer size is 10, so 5 remainder 10 is equal to 5 remainder 10, and that will become 5, that will become 5. So n pointer will be moved to fifth index, and now n will be increased to this position. Now suppose n is at this position, and that is the 10th position, right? So if this is the 10th position, so and the increment operation is performed, so n is equal to n plus 1 or 10 plus 1, because n is 10, so 10 plus 1 becomes 11, and 11% are remainder 11 remainder 10, this will become 1, this will become 1. Okay, this will become 1. So n pointer will be moved from 10 to 1, right? Just like in the previous animation I showed you that how it actually work. So this is and finally, once the character is inserted in the buffer, then the counter is incremented, which shows that the number of characters in the buffer have been incremented. And the first condition, this condition tells us that as long as character counter is equal to buffer size, or number of character is equal to the buffer size, then then the producer will stop and will wait until space is available in the buffer. Alright, and now let's see the code for the consumer. Let us see code of the consumer, that how actually consumer is implemented. So this is the code for consumer. This is pretty similar with that of producer, and this piece of code you can see that there is a buffer, that if counter is equal to 0, then do nothing or wait here. It means that if there is no character in the buffer, counter means number of characters in the buffer. If the number of characters in the buffer is 0, then do nothing, wait over here and definitely until this condition is satisfied. And once the condition becomes true, it means that once there is some character in the buffer or the counter is not 0, then print our buffer out, then put that character to the reader program, and then increment the out pointer in the fashion that we had incremented previously in the producer program, out +1 and remainder buffer size, and then have to decrement the counter. It means that we will need to decrement the counter so that the number of available characters have now become decremented, because one character has been read by the P1. and let me clear this particular portion. For example, with a simple dry run, consider initially when both of these processes P1 and P2 are loaded, then what was actually the position? The position was that counter is equal to 0 because there was no character on the buffer. And for example, before producer, the consumer is executed, a P1 is executed. So once producer executed, counter is equal to 0. As long as counter is equal to 0, then do nothing. So reader program will wait here. It will not proceed because this is the infinite loop, and the loop is that as long as counter is 0, then stop over here. In that instance, for example, P2 is executed. Now because counter is not equal to buffer size, so buffer is equal to next character. Next character will be inserted at this, for example, at n is at this location, so next character is inserted, and n pointer will be incremented, and become n is moved to this position, and counter plus, so counter become 1. Counter becomes 1. Now once counter becomes 1, then this loop which was waiting over here indefinitely is executed, because the counter is no longer 0. So that character will be displayed, that is that character will be read by the P1, and similarly out pointer will be incremented from here to here, and counter will be decremented again, showing that one character has been read. So counter becomes again 0. Once counter becomes 0, then at this position, for example, P1 requests again for another character, but at this position you can see in this loop it will wait because counter is 0. And similarly, if the counter is full, then producer will wait at this location. Okay, but this is not the solution of this problem. There is a there is a detailed problem in this solution. Now let us understand how at a machine level this code is executed. So for example, we are writing this increment operator in assembly language. Okay, so this increment in assembly language means that we will have to assign a counter to a register, then the value of register will be incremented and put into the register, and then register will be assigned to count. So basically this counter operator in assembly language is performed in 3 statements over here, you can see it. And for example, this decrement operator, let's see this decrement operator and write it in assembly language. So you'll see that first we'll have to insert count and to register, then we will have to decrement the value of register and assign it to register, and finally we will put the register back into the count variable. So this is how decrement operator basically works. All right. And now suppose that we are at the position where count is neither 0 nor equal to size. For example, count is equal to 4. For example, count is equal to 4. Count is equal to 4 at this position, right? And for example, at this juncture, both P1 and P2 are executing simultaneously. You can see that both can execute simultaneously because counter is not neither equal to buffer size and counter is not equal to 0. So both P1 and P2 can simultaneously execute on the different threads or different processes or different processors. So in that case, for example, I am executing a sequence, and in this sequence, for example, they are executing. So P1 execute S1. Here I am writing the detail of P1, and here I am writing the detail of P2. This will be P2 and this will be P1. Okay, so this code is for P2. Remember that it is because to increase the counter, and this is for P1. And from other location, for example, counter plus plus, this statement of P2 is executed with this statement of P1 exactly at the same time. But once they are executing at the same time, and the order of execution, what the order of execution is this, that P1 executes S1, P1 executes statement number 1. When statement 1 executed, then register is equal to count and register become 4 because the count is 4. You can see here as I have supposed. So register is equal to 4 becomes for P1. Now suppose P2 executes S1. So for P2, for P1 register is equal to 4. Okay, for P1 register is equal to 4, and for P2 register is equal to 4. Both for P1 and P2 register become 4. The two this pattern has been executed. And let me clear over here. So now suppose this thing executed, and that is P2 executes S2. So P2 executes S2, that is P2. P2 executes S2. So register become register plus 1, that is for P2 register become 5. Register become 5. One more thing that you should know here, that because producer and consumer are running simultaneously, so producer is producing a character and consumer is consuming a character, then counter shouldn't be modified. Counter should be, after the execution of P1 and P2, counter should be 4, because even though P2 has incremented the counter, but P1 has decremented the counter, so we should get a 4. Right? So this is our supposition and our expectation. Now suppose this portion is executed, that is P1 execute S2. So once P1 executes S2, then register become register minus 1 and register become 3. Now register become 3. Okay. And in this statement you can see that P1 executes S3. So P1 executes S3, and for example we have a common, where this is the counter that was a common variable, and register is assigned to count. So register with P1 is 3, so 3 is assigned to counter, and now there is 3 in the counter. And at soon after that P2 execute S3. Once P2 executes this portion, then register is assigned to count, but this 5 is assigned to count, and once this 5 is assigned to count, then the previous whatever data is there in the count, that will be erased, and 5 will be written on this, and both P1 and P2 will execute successfully. And now we are interpreting the result. P1 and P2 simultaneously executed, and they rendered a value that is count is equal to 5. They give us a value that is count is equal to 5, but this is inconsistent. Why? Because producer has produced a character but consumer has consumed a character. Now it tells us that there are 5 characters in the buffer. This final conclusion tells us that there are 5 characters in the buffer, but actually there are 4, because even though previously there were 4 characters, one character was generated, another character is generated, it becomes 5, but the another character is consumed, then it again becomes a 4. So this is a false result. This is not true. This is not true. Now consider another possible sequence, another possible order, and that order will be, for example, here we this statement and executed, this statement is executed here at this point. So P1 okay, the whole story is same. R will get 4 in P1 and register will get 4 and P2. Then second P2S2, it means that that will increase the value of counter, so R become 5 with P2, and again P2S3, it means that P2 will write this 5 on the counter, 5 on the counter, so 5 will be there on the counter. Let me click over here and clear this portion. And once again consider P2 writes 5 on the counter. After that P1 do S2, so P1 do S2 and R becomes 3. Then P1 executes S3, and that is a register is assigned to count, that is 3 is assigned to count, and it becomes 3. And the final value is 3. Previously the final value was 5, and now the value is 3. Both of them are wrong. What we actually needed was 4, but both of them are wrong. Although if we do some proper arrangement, for example, we let this first process, the P2, to complete first, and after that we allow this process to execute, then we will get 4 as a counter, and that will be the correct value. What actually I wanna tell you in this this complete story is that proper ordering of the processes matter. That there does matter, and they matter a lot. If they are not executing in a proper order, if their statements are not executing in a particular order, then the value that they are generating will be inconsistent, right? So such scenario in which the relative order of execution of 2 or more processes result in different values or inconsistencies is called race condition. Thus there is a race condition for P1 and P2 in the previous example. Or you can say that if the end result depends upon the order of execution of the processes, then it is race condition. For example, if I run P2S3 before P1S3, before, if it is executed in the last, then we get the result 5. Counter was 5, and once I executed this at the fourth position, so when it was executed at the fourth position, and after that other results were other statement were executed, then we get a result 3. So if the end result, just like here the counter, if the end result depends upon the proper ordering of or order of the statements of a process or the processes, then we can say that there exists a rest condition between the processes, right? The piece of code through which a process modifies a common global or public variable or data is called critical section of that process. Every process has some critical section, a piece of code in which that process is modifying the global variable or the common variable, right? So for example, we have a process and this is the code of a process, and this code, there is a place, there is a section, and this section it is modifying some common variable, like in the previous example, counter plus plus counter, because counter was a global variable or a counter was a common variable, so it was being modified at a particular junction of P2, and similarly in P1 there was also a section of code where there was C minus minus or counter was decremented. So the section of code in which the common variable is being modified, this is called critical section for P2, and this is called critical section for P1. So critical section is a piece of code in which the common variable is variable or variables are modified by that process, right? So our problem is to introduce a mechanism in which when a process is in critical section, no other processes are allowed to enter their own critical section. In order to avoid these inconsistencies in the result, we will have to make sure that at a time only one process be in critical section, and for that we should introduce a mechanism in which once a process is in critical section, then no other processes should be allowed to enter in their own critical section. So at most one process at a time must be in critical section. This is what we want to introduce. The point at which a process enter in its critical section is called entry section. For example, this is the critical sections for P1. So at the point in which the process enters the critical section is called entry section, and the code which is actually modifying the common variable, this is critical section, and the point in which the process is leaving the critical section is called exit section, and rest of the code will be called the remainder section. Okay, so we can say there are in this in terms of process synchronization, we have 4 sections of code. The first, that is entry section, in which the process is entering in critical section; the critical section in which the process is modifying the common variable; the exit section in which the process is leaving the critical section; and the remainder section, which is the other independent code. Now as we are going to propose solution for process synchronization for inter-process communication, so we should introduce some algorithms, but every algorithm should exhibit following 3 properties. If these 3 properties are satisfied by a solution, then we will say that this is a perfect solution. The first property is that mutual exclusion. What is actually mutual exclusion? If a process is executing in its critical section, then no other process will be executing in their critical sections. Only one process at a time be in critical section. It means that if a process is in critical section, then no other process be are allowed to enter in the critical section, or at a time one and only one process must be in critical section. No more than one process must be in critical section. At most one process can enter critical section at a time. The another condition is progress condition. If no process is in critical section and some processes want to enter their critical section, then only the processes not running in their remaining section can participate in making decision that which process should enter the critical section. Selection should not be postponed indefinitely. What does it mean? It means that we have multiple processes. For example, we have P1, P2 and some other processes over here. For example, this is P1 and this is P2. We have two processes and this one is the 3. And for example, both of them want to enter critical section. P1 and P2 are requesting to enter their critical sections, and P3 now is in remainder section or remaining section. Now it is to be decided that which of the two should enter the critical section, because we should ensure that only one should enter the critical section. So we will have to decide, we will have to take a decision about 1 and 2, that either one should be allowed or 2 should be allowed. In that case, at this progress condition tells us that the processes which are in remaining section should not participate in taking decision about these two. It is the responsibility of these two processes to decide which one to go and which one should not go. The processes which are in remaining section shouldn't participate in decision making. And why? It is because that if they were allowed to be participants, if they were allowed to be participant in making decision, then both of them should wait. Both of them should wait, because this process is in remaining section. Once this process terminates its remaining section, then after that it will have to come back and take part in this decision. So for that reason, these processes would have waited indefinitely or for a variable number of time, because we do not we do not say that how much time will these processes which are running in remaining section should be executing, and we will wait for them. They will execute and they will terminate execution, and then will come back and will take part in this decision making. For that time, the both of them would have waited. So we can say that selection shouldn't postpone it indefinitely. We shouldn't postpone selection indefinitely. This is the progress condition. In the next algorithm we'll discuss it briefly. Bounded waiting mean there must be a bound on number of times processes are allowed to enter their critical section during the interval of request and permission for a process. What this condition says, there must be a bound on the number of times processes are allowed to enter their critical section during the interval of request and permission for a process. It means that if a process is waiting for entry in critical section, and chance is allotted to other processes are coming and they are getting chance of entering in their critical sections, then there should be a limit on this number. For example, we can say that a process shouldn't enter its critical section for not more than 5 entries. It means that if a process, for example, we can say that here is a process and this process is waiting for what? For critical section. This process waiting for critical section, and as long as this process is waiting, another process which was also waiting enters critical section. Another process comes, waits, and then enter. Another process comes, waits, and then enter. Another process comes, waits, and then enters the cross section, and the process number 1 that is still waiting. So there must be a limit on the number of new processes. For example, we say that after 4 processes, after 4 entries, process 1 should get a chance. So it means that a process shouldn't wait, and definitely there should be a bounded wait, not unbounded wait. Now consider the solution for two processes in which we have two processes P0 and P1 computing for some shared resources or modifying some common variable. So here is the code for P0. This is algorithm 1. Here is the code for P0. Do while turn is not is equal to 0, critical section, turn is equal to 1, remainder section, and while true. So this is the code for P0. And look at the code for P1. While turn not equal to 1, critical section, turn is equal to 0, remainder section, and while true. So this one is for process 0 code and this is for process 1 code. Now what actually we did is we declared a variable turn. This turn will show that whose turn is to enter in the critical section. So turn will decide that which process should go in the critical section. You can see over here that while turn is not is equal to 0, it means that while the turn is not for P0, then wait, it means that turn is 1, it means that P1 is in execution, so it will wait indefinitely. This semicolon at the end of while loop shows infinite loop, and it signifies that as long as this condition is true, then the process will not move ahead. Similarly, once the turn become 1, the turn become 0, so this process will enter in the critical section, and after completion of the critical section it will set the turn back to 1, that now it is the turn for process number 1, and now it will execute its remainder section, and this process will go on as long as process not is alive. Similarly, process 1, and process 1 first it will check that whether it's done or not. So turn is not is equal to 1. As long as there is no your turn, then wait indefinitely. But once it is your turn, then enter the critical section, and after completion of the critical section, then give the turn back to 0. It means that now give chance P0 to execute, and then you should enjoy your critical remainder section, and finally repeat this process as long as P1 is alive. Let's simulate this. For example, initially the turn is 0, right? So whenever both of these processes are loaded, then turn is 0. That means that turn is for process P0. But once both of these processes are loaded, and for example P1 starts execution, P1 starts execution, and once it's executed for this portion, then it will stuck in this loop. It will stuck in this loop because in this loop, as you can see, that turn is not is equal to 1, turn is 0. You can see here that turn is 0, it is not equal to 1, so it will stuck over in this loop, and it will stop execution at this point, and it will wait indefinitely over here, right? And at this point P0 also started execution, but once P1 started execution, then turn is not is equal to 0. Yes, as long as turn is not is equal to 0, this condition is not satisfied, so it will enter in critical section and will execute for its specified number of time in critical section, and after exit from the critical section, it will set the turn back to 1, so turn will become 1. And turn, once the turn becomes 1, then this loop which was stuck, it will release and will be executed and will start execution and enter in the critical section. Now it is in critical section. After completion of the critical section, the process set turn back to 0, and it will set the turn back to 0, and now it is done for P0, so P0 will start execution and it will enter in the critical section and set the turn back to 1. And for example, in the middle, P1 also want to execute and it requested, but it once again stuck in this loop because the turn was 0. Okay, so once P0 completes its execution, it set the turn back to 1, and similarly P1 is again released and it is executed. So this is how two process solution is made. But now this solution can satisfy the three conditions that we had discussed previously or not? Yes. The first condition was mutual exclusion, and the mutual exclusion uh, we had told that only one process must be in critical section at a time, and this condition is satisfied. If one process is in critical section, either P0 or P1 will be in critical section. No, both processes can be simultaneously in critical section. So condition number 1 is satisfied. That was for the solutions of synchronization. Now the second condition, was progress condition, and what that actually was, that was the process which want to enter, the processes which want to enter the critical section should make the decision. But you can see in the very first step that P1 started execution, although P0 had not yet started its execution, and it stuck over here. And it was waiting for P0 to take part in decision. So progress condition was not met because C2 not satisfied, because progress was not made. P1 was supposed to execute its code, but it has to wait for P0, which was not yet started. It waited for P0 for some indefinite amount of time, so that it comes and decide that whether should I enter in critical section or not. Once P0 comes, P0 first enters in its critical section and then set the turn to 1, and after this decision P1 started execution. So the decision for P1 was made by P0, which was not requesting for critical section once P1 was requesting. So the process condition was not met. And finally C3, that was bounded wait. In case of bounded wait, you can see that it is a strict alternation. It means that if P0 is executing, then after that there must be P1, after that there must be P0, after that there must be P1. So it is a strict alternation. There is no choice with a process which is even in remainder section, but it is not allowing the other process to enter in the critical section. So both of these conditions are not satisfied, and that is why this is not the fair solution for the synchronization problem. Now let us consider another solution, that is called Decker solution. This algorithm violates progress condition because it follows strict alternation. The process knows nothing about the state of the other process in the previous algorithm that we discussed. Now let us propose another algorithm, that is Decker algorithm. So in this algorithm we proceed as so do flag at 0 is equal to true, while flag at 1 critical section, then set the flag back to 0 in remainder section, and this is how the P1 will repeat its execution. Now this is code for P1, and you can see over here this is code for P0 and this is the code for P1. Okay, so in the previous we just had a turn variable, but now we have a flag array of a boolean array of flag, right? That will be of size 2, that index 0 shows that which process is ready to enter. So if flag at 0 is 2, it means that process 0 is ready to enter the critical section and it has not yet entered. Similarly, for process 1, when flag 1 is true, it means that process 1 is ready to enter the critical section, but it has not yet entered. And after that, both of them will have to check the condition that while flag of another process. So flag of when process 0 wanna enter in its critical section, then it will check the flag of process 1. if the process once flag is true, it means that that process is also entering in the critical section. And if this is not true, then it will enter the critical section, and once it leaves the critical section, it will set the flag back to false, its own flag, that is flag 0, and then will enjoy in the remainder section, and this process will go on. For that, initially flag 2, flag array of size 2 will be declared, and both flags, flag 0 and flag 1, will be set to false. Then, for example, P1 wanna enter in its critical section, then it set flag 1 to be true, that is flag 1 will set to be true. And now it will check while flag at 0, so flag at 0 is not true, it means the condition is not satisfied. Once the condition is false, it means that this wait loop will exit and the P1 will enter in the critical section. So P1 will enter the critical section and will execute. Over here you can see, once P1 is P1 terminates its critical section, then it leaves the critical section with setting flag back to false. So it sets its flag back to false. And now, for example, again P1 enters the critical section, and at this time P0 has not yet entered its critical section, neither it has requested to be entered in the critical section. So once it enters the critical section, it sets its flags to be true, and then it checks whether flag of 0, so the condition is satisfied, and at this point it will enter the critical section, and finally when it leaves the critical section, it will set back its flag to false. Now, for example, flag 0 enters the critical section, so it will first set its flag to true, and at this moment flag 1, so process 1 also wants to enter in the critical section, and it also sets its flag to be true. Now you can see that both of the processes are in infinite loops, and they are waiting, they are pretending that other process is in critical section. Process 1 waits here because it expects that process 0 waits here because it expects that process 1 will be in critical section, while process 1 waits here and expects that process not will be in critical section, although both of them are not in critical section. So this is the major flaw of this algorithm, that in this is unbounded wait is there. No progress is being made, no process is being executed, both processes are in deadlock state because they are waiting for each other to terminate and they are not proceeding. So this is another problem of the, although this problem somehow resolve the issue of mutual exclusion and progress condition were satisfied. Mutual exclusion, that was condition number 1, that was satisfied, and similarly the progress condition that is also been satisfied, but the bounded wait condition, that was condition number 3, has not been satisfied, and that is the major drawback of this algorithm. So this solution is not a good solution for the two process synchronization. Now we are proposing another algorithm that is called Peterson algorithm. Peterson algorithm. Okay. Peterson algorithm, and this algorithm is basically the combination of the previous two algorithms. The previous two algorithms are combined and a new algorithm is proposed, and this way all three conditions are met. For example, look at the algorithm 3. So this is the code for process number 1 and this is the code for process number 2. You can see that both things have been included in it, flag array and turn. So with the help of these two variables, perfect synchronization has been realized. Now consider this is the code for process not and this is the code for process 1. Initially when the both of the processes are loaded, then the flag array is set to be 0. Both flag 0 and flag 1 are set to 0 and turn is also 0. Okay, sorry, flags are false. Now suppose p0 starts execution. Once p0 starts execution, that it sets its flag to be true and turn to be 1. Okay, so it sets its flag to be true and turn to be 1. It means that it want to enter the critical section, and it sets the turn to be 1. That is it allows the process 1 if it want to enter the critical section, right? Okay, next it will evaluate the loop while flag and turn is equal to 1, while both of these conditions are true. So flag of 1 which is false, and turn it doesn't matter what the turn is, but if one of these condition is false, it means that the loop will exit from the infinite loop and this infinite will terminate and it will enter in the critical section. So p0 will enter in the critical section. Once it terminates its critical section, then it sits the it is in the critical section, and p1 requests to enter the critical section. It sets flag 1 to be true and turn to be 0, right? So both of the flags are true and turn is the 0. But once it evaluate the loop, then flag at 0, yes, it is true, and turn is equal to 0, yes. If both of these conditions are satisfied, then this semicolon at the end of the loop shows that this the process will stop here and it will not execute. It will wait for something to happen. It means that p0 is in critical section, and that actually is in critical section. Once okay, similarly p0 once it is once it leaves the critical section, it sets the flag back to false, right? You can see here. And upon this the loop that was waiting over here at this place, you can see while flag at 0, no, if one of the condition is false, then it means it will enter in the critical section, and after critical section it will execute up to so on, right? So this is how Peterson algorithm basically works. So it is a perfect solution for two process solution. And similarly, once the process leaves the critical section, it sets the flag back to false. And for example, both simultaneously enters. For example, at this they and p0 and p1 simultaneously enters the critical section. One a critical enters, so they set the flag 0. And but what about turn? Because the turn is a same variable, and only one value will be will retain on turn and the other will lost. For example, one generates 0 and one generates 1, then one of them will survive and the other will lost, so turn is equal to 1. In this case, you can see that even though both processes p0 and p1 simultaneously executed, but still we have a way forward. There is no deadlock state, because when once this loop is evaluated, so flag of 1 and turn is equal to 1, so turn is equal to 1 and flag of 1 is equal to this process will wait, because both flag at 1 is true and turn is equal to 1, so this process will wait. And similarly, uh, the other process will execute, sorry, because this process flag at 0, that is true, but turn is equal to 0, this is false. So it was basically, this portion is for basically p1. There is a minor mistake, so p1 will execute and eventually it will terminate, and set will this portion flag 1 will become false, this will become false, sorry, this will be true. Okay, this will be true, and this will be false. And you can see that All three conditions are perfectly met. At time only one process is in critical section, so mutual exclusion condition is satisfied. Progress condition, a process which doesn't want to enter in critical section or which is in remainder section is not participating in the decision of the other process, so condition number 2 is also satisfied. Condition 3 is a bounded wait. Even though both processes started simultaneously, they simultaneously set the flag, they simultaneously sets the turn, but still one of them has to wait and the another is to execute, and this is how bounded condition is also satisfied. So all three conditions are satisfied, and now we are sure that this is the perfect solution for two process solution. So Peterson solution is the best solution for two process synchronization problem. Thank you so much. Inshallah, in next video we will learn about multi-process solution, that is Bakri algorithm and its associate. Thank you so much. Khuda Hafiz.